The twin moons of Tarian cast silver light across the endless dunes as Kex Varus adjusted the final connection on the communication tower. 6 months of peace. 6 months of pretending he was just another technician keeping the colony's links to the outside worlds operational. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd once intercepted messages that cost lives, and now he merely ensured farmers could call their families on distant worlds. The explosion shattered the night's stillness. Kex dropped his tools, instinctively reaching for a sidearm he no longer carried. A fireball bloomed against the star-scattered sky, arcing toward the canyon 2 kilometers north. He watched the burning meteor resolve into something decidedly artificial, a ship spinning out of control. "Damn," he muttered, already moving toward his ground car. Pirates occasionally crashed in the Badlands, but something about this felt different. The ship's profile didn't match any design he recognized, and after years of intelligence work, Kex recognized most things that flew. The wreckage painted a scar across the red sand, metal groaning as it settled into the dune. Smoke billowed from the main hull, but the cabin seemed intact. Kex approached cautiously, scanner in hand, checking for life signs. The readings made him freeze. Vortani. His blood turned to ice. No Vortani should be this far into human space. No Vortani should be alive to find him. His hand trembled as he moved closer, memories clawing at his mind, memories of green skin and red hair, of whispered promises and a betrayal that haunted his dreams. The cabin hatch burst open with a crash. She emerged like a nightmare made flesh, silver-green skin gleaming despite the smoke, crimson hair matted with blood. The warrior's armor was torn, revealing too much skin, too many wounds. But her yellow eyes, those eyes, held the same fire that had mesmerized him 3 years ago. Riska, the name escaped his lips like a prayer. She raised her weapon, a Vortani pulse rifle that hummed with lethal energy. "You," she growled, her voice like breaking glass. "I knew I smelled human filth." "You should be dead." Kex raised his hands, mind racing. She'd been captured after he'd transmitted her cell's location to human intelligence. The execution was supposed to be swift. "Many things should be," she replied, swaying on her feet. Blood trickled down her leg, pooling in the sand. "But here we are, spy without honor, here we fucking are." The rifle wavered, her strength failing. Kex recognized the symptoms: plasma burns, shock, blood loss. She had minutes before unconsciousness, maybe less. "Riska, you need medical attention." "What I need," she hissed, "is to watch you burn, to hear you scream for the warriors you murdered." "I never wanted." "Silence," the weapon clattered from her weakening grip. She stumbled, catching herself against the twisted hatch. You killed them all, Torin, Vax, little Kira, who was barely old enough to hold a rifle." Her legs gave out. Kex lunged forward, catching her before she hit the ground. The contact sent electricity through both of them, 3 years of distance evaporating in an instant. She was solid muscle and wounded determination, her scent mixing blood with something distinctly Vortani, something that had haunted his dreams. "Let me die," she whispered, yellow eyes fluttering. "At least, grant me that." Kex looked around the desolate landscape. Dawn was still hours away. Predators hunted these badlands and other things far worse than beasts. If he left her here, she'd be dead by morning. If he took her to his outpost. "The hell with it," he muttered, scooping her up. She was lighter than he remembered, though no less lethal. Her head lolled against his chest, and for a moment she was just the woman he'd loved, not the warrior he'd betrayed. As he carried her toward his ground car, her eyes opened one final time. "Why?" she breathed. "Because I owe you the truth," Kex said, though he wasn't sure he even knew what that was anymore. "And maybe we both deserve a second chance." Her hand found his shirt, gripping it with surprising strength. There are no second chances for traitors. Then consciousness fled, leaving Kex alone with his burden and the weight of decisions that would reshape everything. The twin moons watched impassively as he drove back toward his outpost, toward a past that refused to stay buried, carrying the woman who had every right to kill him. The night held its breath, waiting to see what comes of love and betrayal under alien stars. Kex worked by the pale light of his workshop's emergency lamps, his hands steady despite the tremor in his chest. Riska lay unconscious on his medical table, her warrior's armor peeled away to reveal the constellation of injuries beneath. Plasma burns scored her silver-green skin, and a deep gash along her ribs needed immediate attention. He had never seen her this vulnerable. Even in their most intimate moments 3 years ago, Riska had maintained that edge of danger, that coiled readiness that marked all Vortani warriors. Now she was stripped of everything but flesh and breath. "Stupid," he muttered, preparing the medical nanites. "Should have left you in the desert." Her yellow eyes snapped open. "Then do it," she croaked. "Finish what your betrayal started." Kex paused, meeting her gaze. "Hold still, this will hurt." She laughed bitterly. "Nothing you do to my body could hurt more than what you did to my people." He applied the nanite solution to her wounds, watching her jaw clench against the pain. The tiny machines went to work, knitting tissue and neutralizing toxins. Despite herself, Riska's breathing eased as the agony subsided. "Why didn't you run?" she asked after a long moment. "When you saw it was me." "Nowhere to run on Tarian, and—" He hesitated, his fingers ghosting over a particularly deep burn. "I've run enough." Convenient conscience, but her voice lacked its earlier venom. Kex moved to clean the gash on her ribs, his touch gentler than necessary. She flinched, though he suspected it wasn't from pain. Their eyes met in the dim light, and for a heartbeat the years melted away. "I didn't betray your cell," he said softly. "Not the way you think. Your transmission led them right to us." "My transmission was intercepted. Someone in human intelligence, someone with access to my codes, rerouted it. They made sure every Vorteni operation was hit that night." Riska studied his face. "You expect me to believe you're innocent?" "I expect you to listen." Kex pulled a stool closer, their knees almost touching. "After your cell was hit, I went digging. Found evidence that Commander Thale had been feeding information to both sides, setting up operations to fail, then profiting from the continued conflict." Thale, her pupils dilated, a Vorteni expression he recognized as deep anger. "The human who interrogated our prisoners, who claimed to seek peace while designing new weapons." "The same, but Riska," he reached out, then thought better of touching her hand. "You were executed, I saw the reports, watched footage of your body being disposed of." She turned her face away. "I should have died, would have if not for healer Mix. She managed to slow my heart, make it appear stopped. The human guards were careless with what they thought was a corpse." "And you've been hunting the truth ever since." "Hunting you," she corrected. "I thought you were the architect of our destruction, but in these last months I found fragments, intercepted communications, things that suggested," she gestured vaguely, "that we were both played." Silence stretched between them. Kex finished treating her wounds, the artificial intimacy of medical care creating an electric tension neither acknowledged directly. "Your ship," he said, gathering his supplies. "What brought you here?" "I was following a lead. Thale has been using Tarian as a staging ground. Weapons, mercenaries, plans for a new offensive that would make the last war look like a skirmish." She struggled to sit up, and this time Kex did help her, his hand warm against her back. "My ship was damaged in an encounter with his security forces. And now you're stuck here with me." Fate has a twisted sense of humor, but she didn't pull away from his touch. Instead, she studied him with those unnerving yellow eyes. "You've changed, Kex Varus. Your shoulders carry more weight. There are new lines around your eyes." 3 years of guilt will do that." "And what of other desires?" The question hung in the air like smoke. "Do you still dream of things better left in the past?" The workshop suddenly felt too small, too warm. Kex was acutely aware of her proximity, of the smell of her skin beneath the medical supplies, and the way her crimson hair caught the lamplight. "Every night," he admitted, "even when I thought you were dead, especially then." Riska's hand found his, her touch sending shockwaves through his nervous system. "I dreamed, too, of vengeance, of justice, but also," her fingers traced patterns on his palm, "of unfinished conversations, of promises we never got to keep." "Riska—" "Show me your evidence," she interrupted, but her eyes held different demands. "About Thale, about the conspiracy, then we decide what comes next." As Kex moved to his data terminal, he felt the shift between them. The past wasn't erased, but something new was building in its place. Trust, perhaps, or something more dangerous. "We'll need to repair your ship," he said, pulling up encrypted files. "And we'll need to work together. Can you do that?" She stood, testing her newly healed muscles. The movement reminded him that despite her injuries, she was still deadly, still Vorteni warrior caste, still the woman who had once whispered promises against his skin in the dark between battles. I can work with anyone to bring down Thale, she replied. Then, softer, even ghosts from my past who smell like desert sand and broken promises. As their hands brushed reaching for the same data chip, Kex wondered if some promises were meant to be broken, and others perhaps meant to be renewed. 2 days passed in a blur of shared purpose. Kex's workshop transformed into a war room, holoschreens displaying encrypted files while Riska's ship parts littered every surface. They worked in careful distance, the space between them charged with unspoken things. The temporal displacement here, Riska muttered, elbow-deep in her ship's navigation array. This world plays havoc with Vorteni technology. Kex looked up from recalibrating a power coupling. She knelt by the engine block, the desert sun streaming through the workshop skylight turning her skin into burnished metal. Sweat trickled down her spine, disappearing beneath the tank top she'd borrowed from his supplies. The magnetic storms mess with everything, he managed. That's why I chose Tarian, hard to track anyone through the interference. She emerged from the engine compartment, grease smudging her cheek. You've gotten quiet. Just focused. Liar, but she smiled, the expression transforming her warrior's features into something softer. You used to talk endlessly while working. Remember the underground bunker on Nexar? You rebuilt that entire communications array while telling me stories about Earth Rain. That was different, because I wasn't supposed to be dead. The words hung between them like a challenge. Kex set down his tools carefully, because I hadn't. Thunder crashed across the desert, though no clouds marred the crystal sky. Kex felt the pressure change like a physical blow. Sandstorm, he said grimly. Big one, we've got maybe 15 minutes before it hits. They moved with practiced efficiency, securing equipment and sealing the workshop. But Kex had miscalculated. The storm struck like a living thing, howling winds driving sand through every gap with savage intensity. The power failed. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting everything in red shadow. The storm's fury made the prefab walls groan and flex. The eastern seal, Kex shouted over the noise. It's failing. They wedged themselves against the weakness, their bodies pressed tight as they fought to hold the barrier. Sand found every opening, stinging exposed skin like angry insects. Riska's weight settled against his back, her arms reaching around him to brace against the wall. Like dancing, she said near his ear, her breath warm against his neck. Remember, the victory celebration after the Helicon raid. Except this is trying to kill us. Everything was trying to kill us then, too. The storm intensified, and the seal buckled further. Kex shifted, turning to get better leverage, which brought them face to face in the cramped space. Riska's eyes widened, yellow irises reflecting the emergency lights. We should, he began. Don't, she whispered, don't think. Her lips found his, tasting like desert dust and something uniquely Vortani, sweet with an edge of spice. 3 years dissolved in that instant. His hands tangled in her crimson hair as she pressed closer, their bodies fitting together like pieces of the same puzzle. When they broke apart, breathing hard, the storm still raged outside. But the wall held and something had shifted between them again. That was stupid, Kex said. Monumentally, she didn't move away. We have trust issues, shared trauma, professional complications. A conspiracy to unravel. Exactly, her fingers traced the line of his jaw. Terrible timing. The worst possible. We should maintain professional distance until this is resolved. Absolutely. Neither moved. The emergency lights painted her skin in shades of amber and shadow. Kex studied the play of light across her features, memorizing details he'd thought lost forever. The small scar through her left eyebrow, the way her lips curved slightly higher on one side. I never betrayed you, he said softly. Not by choice, never by choice. I know, her hand settled over his heart. I've known for months, but knowing and feeling are different things. The storm's fury peaked, their makeshift barrier creaking ominously. Without discussion, they adjusted their positions, backs to the wall, arms around each other for stability. Her head found the hollow of his shoulder with practiced ease. Thale's planning something big, she murmured. My sources indicate a weapons test, prototype that combines human and Vorteni technology. When? 3 days, maybe 4. That's why I was heading to Tarian. The test site is supposedly here, somewhere in the deepest desert. Kex's mind raced. If we can find it, sabotage it. Or steal it, use it as evidence of the conspiracy. Together, she tilted her face up to look at him. Do you trust me, Kex Varus, despite everything? With my life, he answered without hesitation. Then yes, together. The storm began to ease, its howls fading to whispers. They remained pressed together, neither willing to acknowledge that the danger had passed. When this is over, Riska said quietly, when Thales's conspiracy is exposed and the truth is out, what then? One crisis at a time. That's not an answer. Kex pressed a kiss to her forehead. It's all I have right now, but Riska, he waited until she met his eyes. I'm not running any more from anyone, especially not from you. Her smile carried echoes of the past and promises for a future neither could yet imagine. Good, because I'm tired of hunting ghosts. As the storm's last breaths rattled the workshop, they held each other in comfortable silence, both knowing they were crossing lines that couldn't be uncrossed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight they had stolen a moment of peace from the chaos of their lives. The desert wind sang its ancient song outside, and for the first time in 3 years it didn't sound like morning. The black market operated in the twilight spaces between worlds, and Nyx Station was its beating heart. Orbiting a dead star between human and Vorteni territories, the station drew traders, smugglers, and information brokers like moths to dying flame. Kex adjusted his collar, checking that his identity scrambler covered his biometric signature. Beside him, Riska wore a hooded cloak that concealed her distinctly Vorteni features. Their repaired ship docked among hundreds of vessels of questionable origin. Remember, he murmured as they navigated the crowded corridors, Vex Thornton traffics in secrets. Everyone here has something to hide. Including us, Riska's voice held an edge. Are you certain about this source? Thornton provided intelligence during my active years. Expensive but reliable. They found the broker in his usual haunt, a cantina where the artificial gravity wavered and the air tasted of recycled desperation. Vex Thornton was more cybernetics than flesh, his organic eyes replaced by tactical implants that whirred softly as they focused. Well, his synthesized voice carried notes of amusement. The ghost spy and his warrior shadow, you've caused quite the stir in certain circles. Kex slid a credit chip across the table. We need everything you have on Thales's Tarian operation. Expensive information, that. Commander Thale pays well for privacy. Riska leaned forward, her hood falling back slightly. Then we'll pay better. The broker's mechanical eyes clicked as they analyzed her features. Vorteni, this grows interesting. He tapped his temple, accessing internal data. Thale's been here recently, recruiting mercenaries, buying silence, and preparing for something that has him very nervous. The weapons test, Kex prompted. More than a test, a demonstration. He's invited buyers from both governments, shadow representatives who have been keeping these wars profitable. Thornton's organic lips curved in something approximating a smile. Your friend has been very busy building bridges between military-industrial complexes on both sides. Riska's hand found Kex's under the table, squeezing hard. This was bigger than they'd imagined. Location, she asked. That information costs extra. The broker named a figure that made Kex wince. And it comes with a warning. Several parties are actively hunting you. Human special forces, Vorteni death squads, and something else. Something with Thale's personal signature. Kex transferred the credits. We'll take that chance. Thornton provided coordinates and schematics, his mechanical eyes dimming apologetically. One more thing. The demonstration includes live test subjects, prisoners from both sides, if you're planning intervention. We are, Kex said grimly. They left quickly, the weight of new knowledge pressing against them. In the station's transportation hub, alarms suddenly blared. Security feeds flickered across screens, showing armed figures in black tactical gear moving with lethal precision. Thale's hunters, Riska hissed. Move. They ran, pushing through crowds of panicked traders. Pulse fire erupted behind them, civilians screaming as the terminal transformed into a battleground. Kex grabbed Riska's hand, pulling her toward maintenance access. This way. They dove into the narrow passages designed for station repair bots. Behind them, tactical boots pounded against metal grating. Riska pulled a pistol from beneath her cloak, returning fire blind. "How many?" Kex asked, leading them through branching conduits. "6, maybe 8, professional." "Great." They emerged in a cargo bay, containers stacked 20 meters high creating a maze of shadows. Footsteps echoed from multiple directions. Surrounded. "Ideas." Riska pressed her back against his, weapons raised. 1, Kex activated his wrist computer, hijacking the bay's loading systems. "When I say run, go toward Dock 17. Tactical teams emerged from behind containers, weapons trained. Time slowed as Kex initiated the command. "Run." Cargo containers shifted on their automated tracks, creating moving barriers between them and their attackers. Kex and Riska sprinted through the mechanical chaos, ducking under swinging loads and leaping gaps between platforms. A pulse blast caught Kex's shoulder, spinning him around. Riska didn't hesitate. She planted her foot and launched herself at the shooter, her momentum carrying them both off the catwalk. They crashed into a stack of crates below, but she rolled free, leaving the tactical operative unconscious. "Fancy," Kex called, clutching his wounded shoulder. "Save the compliments," she rejoined him as they reached their ship. "Launch sequence now." They burst through the airlock as station security finally responded, causing more confusion among Thale's forces. Kex threw himself into the pilot's seat while Riska handled weapon systems. "Targeting scanners," she warned as their ship cleared the dock. "Incoming missiles." "Hold tight." Kex threw the ship into a spiraling dive toward the dead star's gravity well, using the massive object's pull to slingshot them past the missile's tracking capacity. G-forces crushed them against their seats, but they cleared Nyx Station's defensive perimeter. As stars settled into normal patterns and their breathing eased, Riska moved to examine Kex's shoulder. The pulse burn had cauterized cleanly, but it would need attention. "You're an idiot," she said, applying emergency medical supplies. "Tackling armed professionals for information," says the woman who just fought her way through 6 soldiers. 8, she secured the bandage with unnecessary pressure, making him wince. "And I'm allowed to be reckless. It's my culture." Their eyes met over his shoulder, and the adrenaline of combat mixed with months of suppressed tension. Without thinking, Kex pulled her closer, capturing her lips in a fierce kiss that tasted like plasma residue and shared danger. When they broke apart, Riska rested her forehead against his. "This is a terrible idea." "The worst," he agreed, but his hands remained on her waist. "We're wanted by multiple governments, heading into what's probably a trap, with stolen information and several open wounds between us. Don't forget the massive conspiracy we're trying to unravel." "Right," her smile carried an edge of the old wildness that had first attracted him. "And here I thought you'd become boring, fixing communication towers." "Never boring with you around." She kissed him again, slower this time, savoring. "Good answer." As their ship carved a path through space toward Tarian, both knew they were past the point of no return. Whatever awaited them at Thale's facility, they would face it together, bearing the scars of betrayal and the fresh wounds of renewed trust. The stars seemed to approve, burning bright against the void like promises yet to be kept. The compound appeared on their scanners just after midnight, a series of low structures carved into Tarian's deepest canyon, shielded from orbital detection by natural rock formations and military-grade scramblers. Kex studied the thermal signatures while Riska prepared their gear. 12 buildings, reinforced bunkers, heavy guard presence. He traced the layout. "This isn't just a test facility, it's a fortress." "And we're supposed to waltz in?" She secured a last knife to her thigh, adding to an arsenal that would impress a Vorteni war clan. "Just the 2 of us." 3 prisoners scheduled for tomorrow's demonstration. 1 human tactical operative, 2 Vortani resistance members. Kex pulled up intercepted communications. "We're replacing them." Ah, her smile showed too many sharp teeth. "The stupidly dangerous plan, my favorite kind." They sealed their ship and moved through the desert darkness, their new intelligence providing guard patrol patterns and security rotations. The twin moons had set, leaving them in star shadow that suited their purposes perfectly. At the compound's edge, Kex engaged specialized equipment that mimicked security transponders. They moved like ghosts past automated sentries and human guards, reaching the prisoner building as dawn painted the canyon's eastern rim. Inside, 3 figures sat in containment cells, awaiting their death sentences. The human soldier looked up with recognition dawning in her eyes. Commander Varus. Not anymore, Kex whispered, working the cell's electronic lock. Just someone who owes the universe a few favors. The Vorteni prisoners accepted their liberation with warrior stoicism, though one clasped Riska's shoulder in a gesture of profound respect. Red Hair Sister, the dead who walks return to free the living. Not dead yet, she replied grimly. Move quietly, our extraction. Alarms shattered the moment. Containment breach, all units respond. So much for subtle, Kex muttered, drawing weapons. Plan B. Improvise and don't die, Riska grinned fiercely. Standard operating procedure. They fought their way across the compound, freed prisoners, proving unexpectedly capable allies. Kex led them toward the main laboratory, where intelligence suggested Thale would be overseeing final preparations. Pulse fire lit the pre-dawn air as security forces converged from all directions. There, Riska pointed to a reinforced entrance guarded by power-armored soldiers. That has to be it. The assault turned personal as Commander Thale's voice boomed over facility speakers. Varus, I always knew your sentimentality would be your downfall, and bringing your alien pet. How touching. Show yourself, Thale, Kex called back. Let's finish this properly. Oh, we will. But first, let me demonstrate what happens to traitors and the fools who protect them. The ground shook. From the main laboratory emerged something that defied nature. A hybrid weapon, part human-powered armor, part Vorteni biological enhancement, wielding technology from both civilizations twisted into instruments of death. My masterpiece, Thale's voice carried dark pride. The future of warfare, no more need for prolonged conflict when we can simply eliminate the resistance, all resistance. The hybrid weapon moved with terrifying speed, targeting Riska with obvious programming. Kex threw himself between them, deflecting energy beams that carved trenches in stone. The freed Vorteni prisoners engaged with battle cries, while the human soldier provided covering fire. The demonstration's data, Riska shouted. We need evidence. Go, Kex dropped to one knee, maintaining suppressive fire. I'll buy you time. Not happening. She moved like liquid lightning, using the hybrid weapon's bulk against it, finding gaps in its armor to plant explosives. Kex coordinated with their impromptu squad, drawing fire away from her position. Thale appeared on a command balcony, flanked by personal guards. Enough games, he raised a device. Override protocol activated. The hybrid weapon froze momentarily, then its movement patterns changed, becoming more erratic but exponentially more lethal. Kex barely rolled clear as molecular disruptors carved his previous position into smoking craters. 30 seconds, Riska called, working at the laboratory's main terminal while fighting off soldiers attempting to stop her. Almost there. Blood streamed from a dozen cuts as Kex fought his way to her position. Their eyes met across the chaos, a moment of perfect understanding, acknowledgement of odds, and something deeper than partners or lovers. Got it, she held up a data chip. Everything, financial records, government communications, weapon schematics. Now we just need to survive to share it with the worlds. Thale's voice carried pure venom. Self-destruct initiated, 30 seconds. Move, both shouted simultaneously. They ran, herding their small group of allies toward the compound's edge as explosions began in the facility's heart. Debris rained around them, and Kex felt the rush of heat as the hybrid weapon finally succumbed to Riska's explosives. At the compound's perimeter, airborne extraction vehicles had arrived. Not Thale's forces, but unmarked ships that opened fire on security without discrimination. Who, Kex began. Independent journalists, the human soldier explained. Allied with both human and Vorteni underground movements, someone's been orchestrating support based on intel leaks you've been providing. As they scrambled aboard rescue vessels, Kex and Riska exchanged glances. Had their investigation been more public than they realized? Had others been watching, waiting? The chip, Riska pressed it into his palm. Whatever happens, this truth reaches both worlds. We'll deliver it together. Promise me. We're both getting out of this. The facility erupted in a column of fire visible from orbit. Their rescue ship cleared the blast radius, and suddenly they were surrounded by a small fleet, mixed human and Vorteni vessels, flying formation. Later, as medics treated their wounds and debriefed them, Kex held Riska's hand while she transmitted the evidence across multiple networks. Within hours, both governments faced exposure that would reshape interstellar politics. "What now?" she asked, watching news feeds parse their data. "Thales dead, the conspiracies exposed, the wars might actually end." "Now we disappear," Kex squeezed her hand. "Find somewhere quiet to watch the worlds rebuild. Together, always together, if you'll have me." Her laughter carried joy he hadn't heard since before the betrayal. "Stupid human, took you long enough to ask." They slipped away as dawn painted Tyrion's desert in colors of hope, two ghosts who chose life over vengeance, love over duty, truth over comfort. Behind them burned the evidence of old wars. Ahead waited the promise of peace hard-won. The stars themselves seemed to sing their departure, a aria of second chances and futures bright with possibility. Sometimes the price of truth is everything, but sometimes it's worth far more than its cost.